Okay, we've got the old blower motor off and over here on the table. Now it's going to be a little bit easier to show you. You can see these two connectors. When this thing's mounted in the truck, it's going to be at this attitude. So it's somewhat hard to see, but it's not impossible. What I did was just put two connectors together. Slid them on the fan like that. Again, this was when it was installed in the truck. And I have a couple of alligator clips. I hooked one to the positive side of the battery, one to the negative side of the battery. And the fan should have engaged regardless of what this switch was set at or anything like that. Because I didn't have that and I was running pure power to this, that's what let me know that this fan was bad. Okay, so here's our old fan. Let's pull the new one out of the box. This is an aftermarket fan, of course, so we're going to see how this joker works. We can see there's already some differences. Instead of having the connector mounted on the fan, it's got an external connector. But you can see that they're both the same type. It's a little bit different with an aftermarket fan. You can see that we're missing the squirrel cage, so that's going to have to come off our old fan and installed on this new one. So what we're going to do is pull the rubber boot off the old one and install it on the new one in the same attitude that it is. These things are super simple. Be very careful not to break it. It's got just a rubber band. Then you pull that out as one assembly. We know that went on like that, so we're going to put this in the same relative position. It's got a little bit of a sealing grommet lip there, so just carefully put that joker in there. You're going to want to make sure that that's fully seated. We're going to slide our electrical connector through that. And we're just going to make sure that that's sitting on the motor. So you can see that that's all there is to it. We're going to set this off to the side for a minute. Now the squirrel cage is going to be a little bit more unique. There's special pliers that you can get in there and just pull this retaining clip off. I live on a farm. I don't have those special pliers, so we're going to use a screwdriver, use some pliers. You don't want to damage this because that's what's going to hold the squirrel cage in place. So let's see what happens here. I've got just a little miniature pry bar, slowly working that retaining clip up. And we'll popped right off. So we're going to set that guy there. I'm actually going to tap that axle down a little bit. Holding on to that squirrel cage. Can you see all that debris that's coming out of the motor itself? That tells me the brushes have been burnt up in this joker. To have that type of carbon show up, that's all brushes. Okay, I've got that last little bit. Just got a little bit of a pry bar here. Again, I don't want to break that plastic. I'm just going to gently work around this. Okay, and you can see our squirrel cages come off now. This has probably got a fancy high-tech name for it. Military, we always call it a squirrel cage. So you can see this thing. I don't know if the camera's picking it up very well, but you can see a lot of the carbon from the brushes. Our new motor did not come with the seal. This seal is still in pretty good shape, so I'm going to recover that as well. I've got rusted parts falling off this thing. This fan was definitely ready to go. I'm going to wash this up a little bit. It won't be perfect, but it's still, none of the plastic's broken. We don't have any cracks or anything. This is still a serviceable part, so I'm just going to clean it up before we stick it on the new part. I'll clean up my table and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. This is a lot cleaner now. One of the things I wanted to point out, this is plastic, so don't use your brake cleaner on this or parts cleaners or typical solvents on this, because that's going to deteriorate this plastic pretty quickly. All I used to clean this thing was a Dawn dishwashing soap. Don't tell my wife I washed this in the sink. Again, be sure don't use any solvents on this guy or you're going to cause this thing to fail later on down the road. Okay, so we've got our new motor here. As you can see, this isn't a round shaft. It's actually got a what they call blind spline on here. It's a flat side. Our squirrel cage as well has that same thing. We want to line those guys up so the flats are touching. You don't want to just jam it down on there. And that guy's going to slide just right down on that shaft. Remember, we have our retaining clip, and that just pushes down flush as well. Shouldn't have to force it or anything like that. We've got our seal. Okay, so we're going to set this guy aside. Remember our old resistor. We'll get the new one out of the box. Make sure it's exactly the same. It's an aftermarket too. It's not a Motorcraft or anything like that. You can see our new one doesn't have the corrosion like the old one did, but you can see it still has the same resistors on there. The plastic housing is exactly the same. When we turn it over, our connectors are the same. So this guy's going to work out just fine. Let's go ahead and get these things installed back on the truck and see if it's going to work.